Alrighty, friends. So this is going to be the last talk of the night. It's exciting. I really hope you guys are enjoying yourselves so far today. Are we having a good time? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. All right. So I wanted to start off my talk today by kind of reviewing a little bit of what we've been talking about. So if you remember way back in like 6 hours ago, we talked with Elena over here, talking about basically what is apologetics and opening up with obstacles we've encountered in our life, and starting off in a really great way with a drawing activity and really good start to the retreat. And basically Elena gave us the what we are doing. And so then we moved on and we spoke with Amelia. We talked about beauty and how I kind of viewed her talk was more of like the what are we defending part of this retreat. And so that's what I really enjoyed about her talk. And then we moved on to Jeremy Kurgowski, and I viewed his talk as giving us some tools and on how to actually go out and do the thing. And I really enjoyed his presentation on what he did, and I'm really excited to be able to use those tools in practice. So my talk is going to take from what we learned from Jeremy and put it into practice. So I'm going to be the one to teach you how to use your tools, because ultimately, if you hand somebody a hammer, you do got to teach them how to use it at some point. So that is my purpose of this talk, and it's also a way to understand perspectives other than your own. We're going to be talking a lot about the other side and some questions that have come up from the other side. And we're going to be practicing conversing with someone who doesn't agree with you. And we're also going to talk about tips on how to have a good conversation in general, because honestly, this is what apologetics is all about. Lena brought that up in her talk, and how we're not looking to convert. That is an amazing goal that could happen, but that should not be your goal going into these conversations. It's just a conversation. And what's really important is to know the other argument before you present your argument. That is the nature of how debates work. You cannot debate until you hear the argument that you're supposed to defend and everything. So basically, that is the outline of my talk. So we're going to start off with conversation in general, just what happens in a conversation / have you guys ever had a really difficult conversation before? So can I start off with the what happens in a conversation in general? In general, what happens in a conversation in general?
Hopefully listening.
Yes, listening. Great, Shannon. Yes. Listen. Super important. Kurgowski. Eye contact. That's important as well. Sorry. You know, I'm just going to be dropping everything today. Eye contact. That's also great.
RESPCT.
Aha! Respect. I love that. Thank you. It's going to fall. It's going to fall. It's okay. Respect. I love it. PECT. Yeah, okay. What else? Yeah. 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 So no judgment. Words. Judgment. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. Duh. Talk. Duh. What else?
I would say it's a talk dialogue. So people are able to speak.
Sorry, Luana.
I am loving this presentation already.
Yes. What's up? Questions. Absolutely. All right, give me one more. Ah, I like that. Conclusions. I like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, you conclude the conversation and you might step back from it for a minute. So I found a article from Psychology Today. Psychology major, right over here, you know. And they have some tips on how to have a good conversation in general. So the first one, listen. That was the first thing that we talked about. Very important. You can't you can't have a conversation without listening, which is why I loved the Emmaus walk when we did that the last retreat. It was a really awesome activity where you just let some person just blurt out everything for half an hour or 10 minutes. Yeah, that's what we did it for. And the other person wasn't allowed to speak. And I thought that was really awesome, really practicing your listening skills. This is ultimately what I want to end up doing for the rest of my life. So listening is incredibly important when talking to somebody. The next tip, express yourself openly and honestly. And this can be hard, you could be talking to a stranger and you're like, I don't know this person. I really don't want to give them my life story. I can't relate to that because I'm an open book in general, but that could be something that you can struggle with. It's totally valid. But just know that people can sniff out insincerity pretty well, and if you're covering up, they'll feel less confiding in you. Like, if you're putting up walls, that sometimes could be a way to turn off from the conversation. You're like, well, okay, I guess I'm not going to get anywhere with this person, so I don't know how to talk to them. I have this problem with my dad sometimes. He just puts up these walls and I can't talk to him. The next one, avoid making judgments. So we did talk about that as well on here, having a safe space. That is a logical fallacy as well, insulting the person. That doesn't get anywhere in the conversation. You want to avoid that. That's why I love spaces like this, is because we are away from the distractions of campus, and we're not judging anybody here. But unfortunately, this environment is not everywhere else. Janet.
I know this is kind of on topic.
Yeah.
No judgment, but what's the difference between holding someone accountable and judging them?
Oh, that's a big one. I would say judging somebody is assuming their position immediately without learning what their position actually is, like judging a book by its cover, you know what I mean? That's how I view judgment. But holding somebody accountable is very important as well, especially in an apologetic situation. The other person that's talking to you that does not have your belief is going to hold you accountable to give these answers, and you're probably going to fall and struggle to find those answers, but that's why we're here to practice. And being accountable for God's word is a really big job, but that's what we're all called to do. So it's difficult, but I would say judging, you're assuming almost. The next one would be look for obvious cues as a conversation jumping off point. So this one's interesting. When you're having a conversation with somebody, has that ever happened to you where you just completely trail off into some different conversation instead of what you were originally talking about? That happens to me all the time. So in an apologetics conversation, it can be very easy to go down a slippery slope kind of road, and you want to make sure you stay on point, on topic, without going into some deep political issue, for instance. You want to keep it about the same thing, but you can use your conversation to jump off onto different points. The next one is stay on top of the news. And I thought this one was interesting. I think this one's important because, especially since there's so many allegations that are happening right now in the Catholic Church, it's really hard to hear. And that's something that I struggle with, to be angry about what's happening. But staying on top of what's happening right now and hearing what the Holy Father is saying about these allegations and how he just let an appeal not go through, you know what I mean, and being able to talk about that as well. So staying on top of what you're talking about is also very important, because people like this are going to attack based off of what's happening in the church. That's just, in my experience, that's just what's going to happen sometimes. The next one is come up with an agenda. So this one is like, if you're planning on having a conversation with somebody like this, if you have somebody in your life that does not have the same belief as you, and you are planning to have this conversation, it's very important to come up with at least some idea of what you're going to say. And this can help with presenting your arguments in a way that they can understand. It's a way to fact check yourself. It's a way to pray about it and get yourself ready. So coming up with an agenda is very important as well. The next one, don't be scared by silence. I have a hard time with this one. I hate awkward silences a lot, but you know, a quiet interlude in an otherwise lively conversation doesn't necessarily mean your relationship with this person is doomed. It just means there's nothing to be said right now. You know, sometimes you just have to leave it at what was said and you come back to it later. Right. So, and then sometimes also a little break in the conversation can give you a chance to refocus on your points, to rethink what you said before and maybe rephrase it, or to ask a question or something like that. The next one is note whether the other person would like to break off the conversation. So if you notice that the conversation isn't really going anywhere, if you're going into this circular argument and just going back to the same points over and over again and not really presenting anything new, maybe that's a sign to end the conversation where it's at and come back to it later. Or if the other person is starting to get overly emotional and starts to cry because they're weak and they don't know how to handle their emotions sometimes, just maybe that's a moment to break off the conversation and come back to it later. The next one, be careful about making jokes that will be perceived as insensitive. This one is also tough. It's very easy to just start attacking the person as a person. It's very easy to make a tough situation lighter with humor, and sometimes that's really not the great route to go. Humor is great when you talk about really, if you're trying to talk to a crowd with a very sensitive topic, sometimes adding in little bits of humor when you're just one person talking can help relax the audience a little bit. In that kind of setting, that's okay. But be careful about insensitive jokes. That's not really fair to the other person if you're joking about their faith or their not faith. You know, that's not where we want the conversation to go. And the last one from Psychology Today is using conversations with new people as practice for improving your skills. So I took this as is, if you're talking to a new person, they don't know you, they don't know your life, so they can't make any judgments off of you. Well, hopefully they will not make any judgments off of you because they don't know they don't know who you are, they don't know your past. And it's almost like you're a blank slate talking to somebody because they don't have any preconceptions about you. But if you're talking to somebody who knows you and has known you for all your life, that could be very difficult because they can bring up stories of your past and things like that. And you know, they can get you emotional and things like that. But with new people, they can't really do that. So it's almost like in this kind of setting, that's why the small groups are really awesome, is because you're talking with new people, practicing the conversations that you might have on campus with friends that you've had for a couple years. So that was from Psychology Today, talking about just conversation in general. And I'm trying to relate it back to apologetics as I go along. So the next part of this is, and these articles are also in your folders as well. The Psychology Today one is on page 24, but I also want to touch on, this is kind of in a different order that I sent it in an order to Lisa, but it's not the way I wanted it, but it's okay. I didn't fix it when I sent it to you. So, but the next one is going to be on page 15. This is Tips for Conversational Apologetics from Michael Ramsden. This guy wrote an actual book on all of this. I have not read it. I was just looking up really good articles that were clear and concise enough for you guys to read and look over just on this retreat. And it lays everything out really well. I want to look on page 16 under Get Prepared. And these are his actual tips and this is like an outline of his book, apparently. So the first one. First, we need to settle in our hearts that Christ is the Lord of our lives. So, what does that mean to you guys? What does that first point mean to y'all? Go.
I recently heard a Catholic speaker at Seek say that if Christ is not the Lord of all, then he's not Lord at all.
Right.
And that was really powerful for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing that he is everything. Go.
I think it's really important to settle in our hearts, because usually it's our heart that guides us, and we need to feel the Lord in our heart for our lives.
Yeah. Shannon?
So do like also intimacy with God?
Yeah. Getting intimate with him before you go into this conversation so that he can be there to guide you. It's kind of how I took this. His second point. What I found to be quite important in our current age is that we must be aware of how we conduct ourselves. Going back to social media and how that world is right now, and people attacking one another on the platform, when really the conversation really should be an in-person conversation. Or how people conduct themselves on the internet can be very different than how they conduct themselves in person. That too. Anything else you guys have thoughts on that? On that one? Shannon?
I heard a talk by Matthew Kelly once that was like, we're just giant billboards for Jesus, essentially.
Yes.
And like, what are we advertising as Catholics?
Yeah. There you go. Kind of like, being a role model, being a leader by example.
Yeah, if you're in a conversation with somebody and you're talking about how Christians should act and that, and you're not acting like that, they're not going to believe you that if you yourself are trying to prove the evidence of Christianity or Catholicism, but you're not living out your faith, that, why would they believe you? You have no reason to prove to them. But our actions, I think our parents also say, your actions speak louder than your words. And if you're living a life that's according to Jesus and according to the Catholic Church, that is one of the best ways to show the Church's teachings.
Yeah. I like that, for sure. Anything else?
Just thinking about how it might be scary to say that you're Catholic or trying to defend certain things if you feel like everyone's hostile to that around you. But a lot of times if you do speak up that you're Catholic and they have all these positive experiences with you, you might actually be the person that kind of shifts their mindset of what it means to be a Catholic person. And so yeah, it's that billboard for it.
Yeah. Going back to Amelia's questions, how do you present beauty to the world? That's ultimately how we spread our love, is through beauty, whether that be in music, in art, in the way you conduct yourself. Body language is everything, people. I can't stress this enough. If I was up here talking like this and just talk on apologetics, yeah, yikes. You wouldn't be respectful of what I'm talking about. I'm talking chin up. I'm talking shoulders back, presenting yourself in front of a group of people you're proud to be here, proud to show off your faith. So how you conduct yourself is very incredibly important during these conversations, because you do not want to be judged by the way that you're presenting yourself. And obviously you want to present God in this amazing way, because he's amazing to us. So